What's up, you guys? Teddy Striker here, and UFC 311 is happening this Saturday, where Makhachev will be defending his title against Arman Tsarukyan. And Arman Tsarukyan is a very good opponent, and he poses some threats to Makhachev. But due to Makhachev's dominance in MMA and the fact that he's a pound-for-pound king right now, most people seem to side with Makhachev. And in this video, I want to give you guys the keys to victory for Arman Tsarukyan to beat Makhachev this Saturday. I'm not saying that Arman Tsarukyan is going to win this fight, but I'm just giving a game plan for him to beat Makhachev because he is the underdog. But with all that being said, let's get into the first key to victory I have for Arman Tsarukyan. That's going to be I think Arman Tsarukyan should use his jab, despite the fact that he's an orthodox fighter and Makhachev is a southpaw. And typically when you have those sort of matchups, there's like traffic in the way of your jab, and it's typically not used as much, and it's not as effective as if it were both fighters being in the orthodox stance. But it's still a very good weapon to set up a lot of your strikes. You can use it to draw out some attacks from Makhachev, who is a counter striker, and you can even set up some takedowns from the jab and score some damage. And in the southpaw versus orthodox matchup, you can use it as an intercepting punch when your opponent is going for an attack. It's very safe to throw, and it can cause some damage, so use your jab if you're Arman Tsarukyan. Moving on to the next key to victory I have for Arman Tsarukyan, and that's gonna be one of the things that makes Makhachev so good is the fact that he's got incredible striking defense, and this was on full display against Dustin Poirier. But that was mainly because Dustin Poirier was mainly gonna just throw hands with Makhachev, and he wasn't really gonna threaten him with kicks, knees, or takedowns. So Makhachev could afford to use his head movement. But usually in his fights, his main form of defense is his footwork. He just backs out of range and then throws like a counter right hook, or he'll just get out of range. And one way to negate this is by pushing him back to the fence where he doesn't have as much space, and he's going to be forced to, either exchange with you or try to take you down, or do another defensive move that could leave him open to some bigger strikes like knees or head kicks. So take space away from Islam, and you're the shorter fighter too. So, push the bigger fighter back, and also give yourself more space to exit if Islam does decide to open up and throw some big shots of his own. Moving on to the next key to victory I have for Arman, and that's going to be Makhachev has some great counter striking. He's able to make his opponent miss and make them pay big time, and sometimes that's due to his opponents being a bit too predictable and having the same rhythm. And Arman Tsarukyan, he has been countered before and almost knocked out because sometimes he had a predictable rhythm. And in this one against Makhachev, he's going to need to be careful, because from what we've seen, Makhachev's counter-striking keeps on getting better. It keeps on getting sharper, and you don't want to get clipped and knocked out in this fight. So make sure you alternate your rhythm. Don't always, go in the same way with the same attacks. Mix it up, change it up. Attack different levels too. Maybe attack his head one time, attack his leg, attack his body. A lot of times, a lot of Islam's opponents, they usually just go for the head, but, change it up, mix it up, and make it harder for Makhachev to counter-strike you. Moving on to the next key to victory I have for Arman, and that's going to be we saw Makhachev knock Alexander Volkanovski out with a devastating left head kick, and he was setting it up with leg kicks and body kicks, to which Volkanovski didn't really have an answer for. He was just kind of taking them or just kind of blocking, but he wasn't really doing anything to make Makhachev stop throwing his kicks, and eventually that just led to Islam getting a head kick KO over him. But in this one, Arman Tsarukyan cannot just take those kicks. He's got to have an answer for them. He's got to have a way to shut those kicks down. And one way he can do this is by countering kicks with kicks of his own. You know, as soon as he takes it or he blocks it, he immediately returns with a kick of his own. Or he can just return with a punch as soon as he gets kicked, or he defends a kick and then he returns back with a punch right away. Either way, you make Islam Makhachev double think about throwing kicks your way, because there's going to be something coming back his way just as hard, if not twice as hard. But moving on to the next key to victory I have for Arman Tsarukyan, and that's going to be I mentioned earlier about Islam Makhachev's striking defense, and that's mainly because his opponents, like I said earlier, are aiming for the head of Islam Makhachev, and you know that's a lot easier to defend because you don't really have, you know, as many strikes coming your way. And in the first fight, Arman Tsarukyan was actually the more fatigued fighter by the end of the fight, and in this one, you know, you've got some powerful kicks. You got to use them against Islam Makhachev, start fatiguing him, get him to, you know, start breathing heavier, get him to slow down, get that reaction that time a bit down for his takedowns and for his defensive movements. In that way, you have a much easier fight, and also you can even set up like a rear leg head kick. So blast the body of Islam Makhachev and potentially set up a KO. But moving on to the next key to victory I have for Arman Tsarukyan, and that's going to be So earlier in the video, we've talked about how Islam Makhachev's main defense is to just move away from strikes and kind of throw that sort of check hook as he's moving away from the strikes. And as he does that, as he throws that right hook, I feel like he leaves an opening for Arman Tsarukyan to follow up with a left head kick. And we've seen Arman use his left head kick a lot. He has really good flexibility. He throws his kicks with a lot of speed and power, and I feel like he could catch Islam Makhachev off guard, because usually, you know, when you're in open stance, when you're an orthodox fighter and your opponent is a southpaw fighter, you usually throw kicks with your back leg, because that's like the open side. That's the side that you can generate a lot of power with, and it's just more traditional. But what if Arman Tsarukyan starts off a combination and then he ends it off with a left head kick? And he's actually done this in the first fight, but he wasn't able to land it because I felt like he didn't really set it up properly. He didn't get Islam Makhachev to think that it was going to be an exclusive boxing exchange where they're only going to throw hands, where Islam Makhachev would feel comfortable to counter back with some punches. But he could set up by, like I said, making Islam Makhachev think it's going to be a boxing exchange. And then as the fight goes on, you start adding that head kick. And another reason why that combination didn't land is because Islam Makhachev had too much space. And like we talked about earlier, if Arman Tsarukyan is able to take that space away by pressuring him, then that kick in that combination becomes a lot more realistic, and it has a higher chance of landing on Islam Makhachev. And I feel like every time Islam Makhachev like throws that right hook, he's in a perfect position to get hit to the back of the head, just right over the shoulder with that left head kick. And we don't really see this too often, the lead kick, when both fighters are in different stances. But I think that this could work on Islam Makhachev. I mean, take a look at this Steven Wonderboy knockout. His opponent threw that check hook just like Islam Makhachev loves to do, and Wonderboy is able to sneak a kick right behind the shoulder that his opponent just couldn't see coming. Now imagine if Wonderboy was Arman, and Arman throws a right hand or a left hand, and then Islam counters with a right hook, and you know he misses with that hook, and Arman sneaks a left head kick. I mean, look at this. It looks like they started the exchange in an open stance, but they didn't. Wonderboy just took a massive step and he created this angle that is open in the open stance, and he blasts him right over that left hook with a clean head kick that knocks him out. And I think that this very attack can work on Islam Makhachev, and it can even land to the back of the head, which would make it a very devastating strike. So if I'm Arman Tsarukyan, I'm blasting this attack. But he has to sell the fact that it's going to be a boxing exchange, and then end it off with a head kick that catches Islam Makhachev off guard. Because if it's just a regular combination and you don't set it up properly, you're not going to land it just like in the first fight. But if you set it up, you make him think it's a boxing combination, then you can knock him out. Moving on to the last key to victory I have for Arman Tsarukyan, and that's going to be Islam Makhachev has insane takedown defense, and you're not going to be able to take him down just with regular takedowns as we saw in the first fight. Wrestlers generally have very, very good takedown defense and good awareness when it comes to defensive grappling. But one thing that is significantly harder to do is defend a takedown when you don't have a solid base and when one of your feet is off the ground, which can happen when a wrestler throws a strike, or even when they're in exchanges. Maybe they throw a strike and overextend, and then you duck under, and then you try to shoot and get a takedown, which comes a lot easier than shooting regular takedowns on a wrestler with a strong base. Even when you try to set it up with a few strikes, they're still going to have that spectacular takedown defense, and it's just going to lead to this big scramble to where you're going to be using a lot of energy to try to get the takedown, and if you don't get it, they might reverse you and you end up in a bad position. So Arman Tsarukyan, make sure you shoot for takedowns when Islam Makhachev is throwing strikes, when you guys are exchanging, and when he's mainly thinking about striking and not grappling. But those are my keys to victory for Arman Tsarukyan beating Islam Makhachev. Obviously, he's going to have to do a lot more to beat a generational talent like Islam Makhachev. But thank you guys for watching. Make sure you guys tune in for my other videos coming out this week. Make sure to like, subscribe. God bless, and I'll see you in the next one.